Welcome, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Vanessa all the way from Australia this morning.
Woo-hoo!
Many of you have heard little snippets of Vanessa because many of you were at the EY Winning Women in EMEA conference, but there was so much I wanted to ask Vanessa, so much there were so many threads I wanted to pull. I thought, okay, all right, let's do this, and let's do this collectively, and then we also can have the opportunity to ask her a whole bunch of questions. But Vanessa, it is so wonderful to have you with us. Vanessa Garrard, everybody, founder of at least 17 companies. Is that right? Is it 17?
Yes. Yeah, I actually did a count yesterday. So it was something. It's 28 companies.
28 companies,
Yeah.
folks. So how many are still, have you not exited? How many are current?
Well, I have got 7 companies that I own at the moment.
So 7 companies, but has founded and exited 17 companies, and we've got seven that we're actively juggling at the moment. So wow, let me first say that. Wow, that is extraordinary. You don't find many people that have built and exited as many companies as you had, let alone found a woman who's built and exited as many companies as you have. So really extraordinary. So of course that leads to wanting to ask you a million questions. So if you are happy, we'll dig right in. And folks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pound Vanessa with questions for at least the next 25 minutes. And then I'm going to open it up to you all to be able to tease any threads that I haven't already teased. Okay. So Vanessa, take us back to the beginning. Take us back to where it all started with the first business. And maybe share a little bit of the sort of the story of how all this got going and how this appetite for building businesses started.
Yeah, well, I started my first business at 12. And the story of how that was interesting, I think, because I went to the fruit shop with my mum and I wanted a toffee apple and it was 50 cents. And she said, and I asked for it, and she said, no, well, when you've got your own money, you can have it. And so the next week I nicked 50 cents out of Dad's wallet. And so when I got there, I paid for it. And of course, she knew that I'd stolen it out of Dad's wallet. So I got home and got, flogged and got in a bit of trouble. And after that, Dad sat down and he said, you can't take money, you have to earn it. And I said to him, well, how do I do that? So he said, well, you got to do something someone's going to pay you for. So at that point I was looking, so I was 8 then, and I started weeding gardens around the neighborhood and newspaper runs and all that sort of stuff. But then at 12, I started selling lollies for somebody, and I just thought there was probably a way you could make a little bit more money in doing your own brand. So I started doing my own private label lolly business and got all my friends involved and all their parents driving us around the streets selling lollies door to door. So that was my first business.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I've had heaps since.
Not looked back since the lolly business took off.
No, and I just thought, but then it had to get easier, right? Because I wanted to get into product because I didn't want to sell time. And if I was sick, I didn't earn any money. So then it got me on the path of going down the product route and actually working, to develop up products rather than just selling your hours.
So tell us about the first major, because a lot of your businesses have been consumer goods. I know not all, but many. Tell us maybe sort of some of the early journeys of building a consumer goods company that you've sold.
Yeah, so the electronics company. So I was doing consumer electronics for all the major retailers. And actually, we sold to Macro and a few others in South Africa too. But I had that for about 10 years, and so I'd built that up. So that one, I started with 10 grand that I'd invested in, and we ended up, I sold it for 50 million. But we worked with every major retailer around the world. So that was including Walmart and Argos and Dixon's and Dillard's and all the retailers. So the key thing with that one was that I knew from the start I wanted it to be global. And so it was even the way that we would tool and design product to make sure that, I had interchangeable power options and things where I could go. And so that saved us a lot of money and time, but it also meant I could scale the business faster. So having the viewpoint with that particular business from day one that I wanted it to be global, every decision we made was that I could actually really scale up. I developed one product and could sell, millions of products from that. So that was it. That's why that one scaled up particularly fast. And I was able to exit that one. And I had offices in, US, China, UK, New Zealand, Australia.
Take? From starting that business to exiting that business, how long did that take?
I did that one. I had it for 10 years. But if I'd had it now, I'd do it much faster. Right. So we just, we were happy with the growth, and it was, the first year I thought we'd had a plan that maybe it'd take us 3 years to get to $3 million. And we'd done that the first year. So it just went really fast, that one. But I would do things a lot quicker nowadays. So I'd have a better timeline.
Now looking at that and thinking about how you accelerate that, and for some of these ladies who are early stage startups, what are some of the things in your own mind that are accelerants and that cause acceleration? I mean, and you said something global from the outset, but how does that translate in a practical day-to-day? This is how you turn this key and move the needle on this.
Well, I think I did too much myself, and I didn't delegate enough, and I do that now. Right. So now I've got teams, and you're running the teams faster. So I would definitely I would have hired people quicker. Was one. I was scared of debt, and I shouldn't have been. So now I'm happy to get debt in every business. If it's going to go and deploy that money into making profit, I'll do it. Right. Especially rather than giving away equity. So I would get debt if you've got any option to be able to do that I could make a decent margin on. So I wouldn't be scared of that now. And that would have made a lot of difference. I didn't have a good CFO either. And when I did, that changed the ball game. So at the beginning, I had a business partner, and he was just sort of dabbling with the accounts, and we did hire a CFO, but he didn't think big enough. And when I went to launch into the US, I had, back then it was Toys R Us, and they've gone out of business now. But then we thought that they might do $1 million order. And we went in there and did the meeting. They came out and they said they do 10. Right. So wow. I've gone back to the CFO, and I didn't understand my numbers enough properly then at that stage either. And I said to him, look, can we fund this order? And he said, no, we can't. And I remember sitting there, that was a Friday, and I went away on the weekend. I'm like, how can we not fund this? This is ridiculous, right? And luckily I ended up, so he said, no, we turned the deal down. But it was the next week I sat there and I actually said to him, I want to sit with the bank, and I want to actually understand why they wouldn't fund this. So I got the bank in, and he never even asked them. So we turned down a $10 million order, and we could have funded it because he was scared it was too big.
Wow.
So since then, I've always got good CFOs say, we're on the same page, we're going to grow quickly, and I just need you to figure out how to fund it. So that wouldn't happen again. So now it's always, and having a really good relationship with the CFO is important for me. And
pushing a lot of the funding and debt financing responsibilities onto a CFO.
Yeah, absolutely. A decent one. And that's one thing I wouldn't skimp on now, is a decent CFO, because I need to be strategic and saying, okay, how do we best fund this business, and the right capital to deploy to make the money, because we could grow as quickly as we had the money there to fund the goods, or even, get the sales and marketing going. So I want a good CFO that can keep up, because we get shit done and it's happening quick.
So 3 things there. So the CFO, building teams, delegating, and debt, not being afraid of debt. What about driving the sales engine? What has that looked like? What does it now look like in your head when you think about accelerating growth?
Yeah, well, and I think I didn't understand we could have got sales agents on commission. And I didn't know that until a few businesses later, actually. So my camping company, which is the biggest camping company in the region for Oceania, that one was all commission-only agents. So I could put on more agents, and it's, relative to whatever they're selling, not paying sales reps, right, to have there whether they sell or not. So the commission agent model is something I love, and I do that in every business now, and even ones that I'm chairing, is we actively look for agents that are on commission because they're hungry, and I'm not paying them if they're not selling.
Tell us what that looks like when you've got retail products. Does that mean agents in store? Does it mean agents?
No,
Connecting
buyers.
to
So
buyers.
yeah, buyers. So B2B model, they'd be going into the head of whichever department that is, right? And talking to them because I want volume. So I'm working with all the major retailers first, and we focus on the big retailers because just purely, it's a better business model for us.
I can hear a million light bulbs going off for a lot of the ladies on this call going, sales agents, I didn't know they existed. So yes, tell us more about them. Tell us how you found out about them and what they call themselves and how you find them.
Yeah, well, and a lot of things I've found over the years is actually asking the buyers. So it was asking who my customers, my end customer, who else they deal with, right? Because they're seeing suppliers every day. And I'd say to them, look, have you got a decent sales, sales rep? And it'd be, is there anyone on commission? So we just contact them and say, look, here's a commission model. And every one of them would take it because they knew they could earn a lot more than if they did it right, they'd earn more than they would being on a wage. Yep. And I just find they like the idea of running their own businesses, as an agent, but they're a lot hungrier. And they scale. Like I've got one in one of my companies now that he started with me, and now he's got 5 people working under him.
Wow.
So he just keeps building and building and building. I'm like, well, that's fine. It's on to him to try and find me more sales staff, right? So I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Amazing. So he and people like him are dealing directly with buyers of retail stores or retail chains and are placing your products effectively.
And then one thing I'd recommend with that, though, is how we keep control of the relationship is I make sure I do those top-to-top meetings, every so often. So, if we have a big trade show in Hong Kong or, if I can see them all at once, so we're clever with time, I'm not jumping on a plane every other week. It's if I can see them in a centralized place, and normally that's our trade show. So I just go there and make sure I see every one of the major retailers while I'm there. So they're still hearing from me what the ethos is of our company, what we're doing for them, that we appreciate them. It's not completely delegated out. I think that's still important to send your message across.
That is fascinating, I think, because for many product companies, the holy grail is like, how do I get into a retail store? How do I get in front of people? And what you're telling us is there's a back door, and it's sales reps, that it's buyers that are not necessarily the buyer for the store, but they're people who are agents for,
Yeah, and the US is really strong with that model. So, and I've been at trade shows where I've had Walmart or Target or one of the big retailers actually come up and say they want to work with us. They'll actually put us onto their agents. It's the way the US, it's quite antiquated, really. You couldn't deal directly with them anyway. You have to work through these agents. But that first key meeting, if they're a major retailer, I'm sitting in that one as well to explain who our company is, what we do, and why they should work with us.
Amazing. So many gems there. Thank you. All right. So we've got accelerant. So now you're thinking about, all right, I've got products, or I've got a product that I've developed or that I like, or someone else has developed and I like it and I want to take it to market. I'm building teams. I'm using debt. I've got a great finance person at my right-hand man. I'm leveraging networks to escalate my reach. And then what? Then I'm thinking about my path to an exit.
Yep. And to that point, what I do now is I actually have that planned out from the start. I don't start a business without knowing what the exit is now.
And knowing how big it will be and where you want to get it to.
And so, I mean, even one this morning, so it was a new company. I was just in the state, they're just acquired. So, the first 30 days are sitting there saying, what is this exit going to look like? Who are we going to sell it to? What revenue? What's our trigger? Right. So every decision we make then keeps us on that path. So, working with my CEOs and my CFO to say, look, we're going to get that one to 10 million and then we exit it. Right. And these are what we, so we stay focused on. These are the customers, these are the markets we're going to hit. It's not just and it's all planned then. You've got more control and more focus, and takes kind of all the urgency, and you're getting caught up in the weeds of the business. This is really, we're strategic, right? That's the customer. We don't get caught up in because there's lots of opportunities in business, and you can get caught up with the shiny ball syndrome. But then all of a sudden your business is off in a tangent, right? We can take every order that's there. We'll just go, no, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit in that box. We've agreed this is our strategy, and those are the customers we work with.
And so some people would say, okay, thinking about selling a company when it's doing 10 million of revenue is really early. So,
but I mean, that one's a SaaS, that's a SaaS business, right? So that particular one is that actual value of that will be 80 million.
Okay.
Right. So that's a different one. But product, look, and it depends on, my thing is not really about the size of it. It's really about whether I've got, when you want to sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my electronics company, I built that to 400 million before I sold it. Right. Because that made sense to who I knew who the buyer was going to be. It was a particular size private equity. And to get the best strategic value, I needed to be sitting at that range. Right. So it depends on
when you understand the kind of company or the kind of person that buys this kind of company would need to see this business doing X, Y, and Z for it to make sense.
Yeah.
But like you said,
and so I've got no interest in floating a company, right? That's something I just no interest. So if that is a pathway, and some of my companies have been, I'll know to get out, when I want to get out and get somebody else taking that on for that pathway, right? So I'll build it to a point where someone who is good at IPOing the business, then I sell to them.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that we often forget when we're thinking about selling a business, is that often people buy businesses who are going to go on and sell it again. That they might not be like the last person who ever owns this business, that they will likely want to do something with it after they buy it from us. And I think sometimes we forget that. And the importance of that obviously then becomes, can you leave something on the table for someone else to go on and
and I think I actually work with a lot of companies and mentoring things too, where we talk about the exit, and it is about planning that exit from the start and controlling the exit, right? So unfortunately, the myth is that you sell your business when it's mature. The problem with that is you don't get the right valuation. Because if I look at it as an investor, I'm saying, well, I actually can't grow it. Okay, I can't continue to grow this business at 30, 40, 50% per year on year. So I'm putting money in it. The only way this goes now is it stays stable, and worst case, it might actually go down, right, in value. So I need to see that I can get in there and I can actually make some significant growth in that business. Otherwise, it's not a business that I would purchase.
Yeah, fascinating.
So it's going to a point where I think time and the value, and once I've start tapering off or can see that the path might be going to a point where it's either going to need a whole lot of extra cash, or it might be that it needs to go into another region to grow, and I don't want to muck around with it, or growth would start to slow down a bit, then it's time to exit, right, for me.
Fascinating. And I know now, because you've got so many businesses, that you're not just working on one business at one time. You've got very good at hiring CEOs. So tell us a little bit about that strategy and how you think about your role as you think about growing and scaling businesses.
Yeah, and I think, there's some reason we have this idea that because we founded a business, we need to be CEO. And I don't believe that we're all equipped for it. So, and everyone's replaceable. A good CEO can jump in any business and run it, right? And there's 8 billion people on the planet. There's some decent bloody CEOs out there that'll do a better job than me. Right? So what I realize I do well is I can see patterns, and I can see where I could collaborate, get a couple of companies together, and they might not even be the same type of company and not competitors, but they naturally fit, and we can grow them both together in their synergies. So where my best value for my company, my team, and for my shareholdings, is that I've got the time and the bandwidth to sit down and go strategically what makes sense for these businesses. Do I go and acquire something? Do I sell something? Is the time right to, put on some new technology in there? Or what does that look like to get the best value? And that's what my mind needs to be focused on, not the day-to-day running of the business. Let a CEO do that, or a GM do that. And I'm on sort of the board or the chair strategic side.
Yep. I love it. How's it working out?
Good. Really good. And I love it because I think, in particular, and I'm on a few boards too. I love the strategy piece, right? And that's just, you're getting into the bullshit of day-to-day sometimes in business, and it's so boring. So it's like you get into the strategic stuff, I'm like, yeah, I want to do the deal. I want to do, but these are the deals where it's not just selling, getting a sale or an order. This is, I'm getting I'm working on something that's millions of dollars, right? That's interesting.
Needle moving. Yeah. 100%. Tell us what you wish you knew then that you know now. I mean, you've shared some of these tidbits about acceleration, but what do you wish you knew earlier in your career that would have made a massive difference?
People ask me this, and I don't like the question, because I think I needed to have gone through everything to be where I am, right? And I never believe in the mistakes, and even when things have gone to shit, there's something to learn. I'm very critical and looking inwards to go, okay, what did I do? What could I have done differently? What do I learn from it, right? And I always say there's lots of lessons. There's not mistakes. There's a heap of lessons, and some just cost more than others. Right? So for me, it's what I couldn't change anything. I think if I change, it's almost that sliding door thing. If I changed it, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And I needed to learn some of those really tough times. I think I always talk about the bipolar and bloody entrepreneurship. Sometimes you're in the fetal position in the corner, and other times you're ecstatic, right? So that's all part and parcel of it. It's ups and downs, and it's, it couldn't change anything. So I wouldn't even begin to think what that advice would be, because I don't think I know everything now even. And I'm learning every day, right? And we continue to learn.
That's what I love about the entrepreneurship journey, actually, is that it is like this constant learning curve. And that even when you have done it before, and even when you have had big successes, there's still loads more to learn. And then actually, if the learning curve doesn't feel steep enough, you're not on a great path, right?
I know. That's what I say to my husband. It's almost like if I'm not on the edge a bit, if I'm not, I'm not pushing myself a bit, it's almost, I don't know, I get bored, right?
Yeah.
I need to do something, learn something new. I need to go harder. What else is there? It's kind of, I don't know, it's a bit addictive, isn't it?
It's also a little sadistic, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm a bit competitive, so that probably helps.
Yeah. Biggest failure. Tell us your biggest failure.
There's plenty. I think, I do know, right? Okay, so the one that I think is the biggest failure, but it's also the biggest lesson. So I'm always looking at the glass half full stuff. But I had a competitor who tried really hard. Anyway, they kept approaching us for years, wanting to buy us, and it was the electronics company. And we'd sat down a couple of times in the room with them, and they could never afford us, right, with the price of our company. They were bigger, but they just weren't as profitable. Our business model was smarter. So their way of dealing with that was they poached like 14 of my staff, and they offered them basically, open checks to go and start, to go there. And I had this one sales guy who actually had come over from there, because there's only two of us in Queensland, where the state that we're in, two of these electronics companies. And I remember at the time going, I probably shouldn't hire him, but he obviously sold himself. And I hired him, and he was just he was so toxic, it wasn't funny, this guy, right? And that was their culture. It was just terrible. Just everyone stabbing each other in the back. It was terrible culture. But I hired him, and I remember there was one phone call I had with him. I was in China, and he rang me, and it was everything with him was like urgent, panicky. And I remember getting off the phone. I was sitting in the cab, and I said, I need to let that guy go. And I didn't. Right. So my biggest lesson was I didn't listen to my gut, and I wasn't congruent, right, with my decision, and I should have let him go. What happened a month later, and he knew that he was on the outer with me. So he ended up taking like 5,000 files off my network and took it to the competitor, and it resulted in $40 million worth of sales. We were working on projects no one else knew about, and they took $40 million worth of sales, 12 million in GP. Right. And then had poached at that point about 20 of my staff. Really bad stuff. Went around to retailers. They even had our presentations, where we had a presentation with a typo on it. And so the buyer said to me, I've seen the same presentation. I'm like, well, you can't have. This is the first time we're pitching it. Like, no, we have seen it. And he pulls it out and shows me my presentation with their logo on it.
Wow.
I'm like, and even the typo was there. Like, he didn't even bother to do the typing properly or autocorrect. Right. So it was, and it ended up costing millions in, going to the Supreme Court and fighting it, which we won. But it was just and I go back to what would I have done differently? And it would have been listen to my gut and let him go earlier. And I didn't do that. So I think that's my biggest lesson. But at the same time, I mean, I've learned so much in terms of legals and teams and things. So, and how to counter all those things now. And I would have done an injunction. There's a whole stack of stuff that would have been cheaper, easier to deal with, and a lot less bloody heartache. But you don't know till you go through it.
Whew, that sounds like I mean, I often say my most expensive lessons have been my most valuable lessons. And the you can't quantify the pain with the expense, right? Because they're comparable, but sometimes, the pain of something that is bad steers you in a way that nothing else does.
But I think the other thing too is we get caught up and we love hearing the inspiring stories, right? I prefer to understand what someone did wrong to go, how do I avoid that? So a lot of the bigger business people that I use as mentors and then I ask advice for, I get on the phone and have a chat with, it's always like, what did you do that you wouldn't do, right? What do I need to know that so I don't do it? And you need those open, honest discussions. A lot of people just say that it's all marketing blurb, right? They don't want to tell you anything went wrong. So I love those discussions.
Everyone's story has a whole bunch of failures muddled in between it, right? There's not a success story on the planet that doesn't have plenty of failure, plenty of expensive mistakes racked up in the middle. And part of the challenge is not being afraid of them, right? Not being afraid of mistakes and figuring out how you navigate your way around them.
Well, and I guess the biggest thing is how do you not do it again? It's okay to learn it once. It's not okay to learn it twice.
Yeah, exactly. How do you use that as a stepping stone to help move you forward? Yeah, 100%. SaaS. Let's talk about SaaS for a minute. We talked about consumer goods, which you've got a lot of. You're also doing a lot of SaaS. Tell us some of the unique learnings of SaaS. Some of the ladies here have got SaaS businesses. What's different? What's unique? What are the accelerants for SaaS that are different than consumer?
Well, I mean, obviously growth rates, right? So the biggest thing is you've got to run this fast. And I think the time to sell is quicker too. So where I find, and I'm chairing a couple of really large SaaS companies, and the problem is some of them are, 10, 15 years old and they're growing too slow and the valuations taper off completely. Right. So the biggest lessons are go hard, keep that growth going or get out. Because if it's going to take a whole, if you're not going to raise the capital to keep that thing growing or lead it to a path of profitability, if you can't see that in your line of sight, then I'd be saying get out and let somebody else grow it, right? Because every day it starts to devalue the pricing. So it's just everything is on growth with that one. And sometimes I think there's a problem with that in that, it's growth for growth's sake, right? And you really got to work out how you deploy the capital that you raise. And I've seen a lot of businesses with SaaS. It's great to go, and it's tougher at the moment, of course, but raising capital and they just waste it because it's almost like it's somebody else's money. And I'm saying, but you're still giving away equity for it, right? Yep. You've got to treat it the same way as anything else.
Generate ROI on it. Yep.
Yeah, but I find that there's a different attitude in the way the money's spent. I still go lean startup, right? Lean, and if the money's not going into revenue creation, then why are we doing it? So I think it's all about growth. And profitably, if you can do it.
What have been but I'm going to come back with questions first. Hold your fire, don't worry. What have been some of the specific accelerants for driving growth with SaaS businesses? And I guess by that question, I mean, launching a SaaS product is very different. It seems to me anyway, and I'm not experienced in SaaS businesses, with launching a product, a hard product, and finding growth channels seems slightly more difficult because
and I think this is the other thing. Again, from the start, you have to have a global business with SaaS if you're going to get any decent valuation. Looking at your own home turf isn't enough because you won't get the growth that you need, or you'll get to penetration point and then you can't sell it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So we're still in that mindset that there's got to be growth and fuel in the tank when you exit. So with that in mind, whatever you are building needs to be able to be scalable globally. And that doesn't mean that you need multilingual everywhere. It could just be that you just start with, English speaking countries. and the Queen's English, right? So you go US after that because you obviously need different up and things for the US, but there is enough business then. If you looked at South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, UK, US, you've got a really big size market there. The TAM there is good. So if you can find something that can go across those markets, then, and without a lot of change or costs, dev to change that, then that's great. So I think the market.
When you're thinking like that, and you're thinking, okay, I've got something that can be used in all those countries, what's the path to market? Because it's expensive, right? So, and if we're thinking scrappy and lean and keen, how do you take something like that to market, knowing it can work in multiple countries? Do you think country by country and focus marketing?
Yeah.
Or how do you?
Yes. And that's where we go wrong all the time. We kind of spread, spitfire stuff out there, and it's throw enough shit in something and stick, we always call it. So, that's nice, except you're trying to then work out, you've still got all the back end support. How am I going to do, customer service and the hours and all, so for me now, if we're going into a new country, I'm saying I want a business case on that, right? So even if it's Australia to New Zealand, it's a much smaller market, but I sit there still saying, okay, how much money is it going to cost? How much time are we going to give it a crack, right? Just not making excuses that we're almost there. No, we're going to say it's going to take, a year. It's going to take X amount in capital. It's going to take, this is who is in charge of it, right? Someone needs to own that project. How are we communicating it? How are we marketing it? How are we going to get recognition for our brand? It's particularly if we're displacing a competitor, or we have to educate the market. So that part of that strategy is, okay, we're going to do digital marketing, right? And we're targeting who are these customers, and we go out hard from day one to everybody. So we'll put that money into digital spend.
One market into digital spend.
Yeah, and just go focus, because otherwise you're spending a bit here and a bit here, and you don't really get any traction.
Yep.
So we'll go market by market. And so we'll turn around and say, okay, look, what's the smallest one? We've learnt, and you need to obviously protect home base, because we can get too excited with the new country that we forget about our own backyard, and all of a sudden we've got people nipping at our heels here, right? So I think you're making sure that you've got you in your core business, fundamentally somebody's looking after that. But if you need someone in control of looking after that international growth, right, for that region, or because you're too distracted. It's a whole different thing. You might have idiosyncrasies, you might have different context, different wording, different. I mean, we've got one of my companies is a sports tech one, and it's even the point, like in Australia, we call soccer, right? The UK call it football. That's a fundamental thing. If I walk into the UK and say soccer, they laugh us out the door.
Yes.
Right? But the same thing in Australia. And I think we've got to understand those things. So you've really got to spend the time, and who are our competitors, and what do we, we tend to know our own market really well, but we need to spend that amount of energy and time into understanding the market we're going into as well.
What are you dreaming about at the moment?
Well, I'm putting a $100 million fund together to help women in business, so backing women-led businesses. So that launches next month, and so that's something I've invested in women-led businesses for the last 15 years, but this is now a really conscious, bigger kind of option for growth funding. So that's what I'm dreaming about right now.
And why do you think that matters? Tell us why you think that matters.
How? Because every deal I did, and this is including the EYs and Deloitte's and PwC and all the biggest lawyers, and this is across Australia, China, Hong Kong, US, UK, Holland, where I've done these deals, every single time I'm the only woman in the room. Right. And then when you go and raise capital, I have been to one meeting with VC, and I would have done hundreds of VC meetings and PE meetings over the years. Had one young girl that came in, and she was assisting. Everyone else was men. And we know that women-led businesses get, 2% of the global funding? But we are incredible at running companies, and we can multitask, and you give someone who's busy more work and they'll bloody do it, right? So I love backing female founders, and I think that, we do speak as much as, sorry for the men on the call. I know you'd be advocates for women, but I'm not trying to take a dig. I just think we do think differently to men. And I don't think, over the years to make my businesses work, I played the game, did that. But, you change to fit in. I actually want the market and the industry to change to fit us. So the only way to do that is for my money where the mouth is, right? Like you have, Sarah.
Yep, 100%. 100%. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it's going to take. Just showing up and starting to put money where we believe it matters and start helping.
Well, I want to, part of our fund is, working on how to make sure that the founders actually understands how to invest as well. But the ideal thing that they exit and then they become, right, part of that fund.
Exactly. Yeah, you build and have a great exit and you start investing yourself and start putting your hand back out to help other women do what you
pay it forward. Yeah.
100%. Amazing. Vanessa, I know they're all champing at the bit, so I'm going to open the floors on the doors. So maybe anyone who would like to ask a question, maybe raise a hand, and then I can call you up and you can go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it, Michelle.
Okay, so my question is related to one of the questions you've asked about you seeing companies just wasting money, especially like startup. What do you think they waste money on the most? Other than hiring the wrong people, like
it's hiring too many people at one time. They get excited because the cash comes in the door. And I've seen this so many times, and particularly in dev and SaaS companies, it happens more than anywhere, is, okay, I'm just going to put on this huge dev team, or I'm going to hire all these sales and marketing, and they expect that they're all going to be hired at the same time. And even the budgets will show you that, right? They'll have a budget and go, I'm going to hire 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, 50 people, and it's all in the same month. How do you physically manage that? And the reason this doesn't work is setting everything up for failure. Yourself, the team around them, the employees, right? And then 6 months later, you're going to have to probably lay them off. So it's hiring too fast, too many people. Your system, it actually crashes your systems. It crashes, your culture. It's, and you lose a lot of money. So I think it's better to actually kind of chunk it out and gradually to build that team out.
And would you say, so you were talking specifically about spending, when you go into another country, spending on digital only. Why are you opposed to spending, say, on billboards or radio?
I would never do anything that I can't actually properly measure. So for me, digital, I can measure. I know exactly what's coming from that in the spend. So I like it. I can control it. I know what's working, right? So for marketing, but it depends, and not every business. Some of my business, I do have people on the ground, right? It depends what type of business it is. But a lot of the SaaS stuff, it's not, because, you're not going to get the doors open quickly if you don't know them anyway. So the digital one and having targeted digital approach and automated. So we have our customer journeys all automated. And so that works because I can get a lot more reach, a lot quicker conversion, a lower cost to convert than I can with having people on the ground. So, but then, when it comes to national accounts, right, once we are established and we've got our big customers, those big ones need nurturing, right? And then I'll employ account managers and have them there to maintain those relationships and to be there for the customers. But in the startup thing, I prefer to put that money into digital.
Got it.
I love that, just because you're saying I can measure it. I can measure what's working, what's not working.
And you can make the changes quick.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier than trying to, with people. Yeah, and you all know, right? People's the bit you can't control. You might have a great salesperson and then you'll get 3 shit ones. but you also don't know if something happens for them at home or something, they're all great for a while and then something happens. You can't control it all the time. I like the marketing bit that's digital because you can control, switch it on or off, or I put more money in, or I take it out, or that's not working, swap it over. It's a lot more agile while you're learning.
Brilliant. Evelyn, you've got a question.
Yes, so I have 2 questions. And so first one, just on the commission models, are they digital consultants or physical models? And then back to the strategy, right? So once you've set it and you decide to execute, right? What sort of visibility do you have like on your team, on the strategy, and what sort of metrics are you sort of tracking just to make sure that everything's going okay?
What type of business have you got, Evelyn?
It's a fintech company and we provide online loans and investments.
So is it a SaaS? Oh, so no, you're working on transactional.
Exactly.
Okay, so transactional. All right. So with that one, in terms of so if we talk about the strategy, so strategy piece first is I'm always on top of strategy, right? So I know where the business goes and I will always lead that down to my whoever's, reporting to me, and I make sure I deliver that. I don't delegate that bit. So all my key executives, all my heads of countries, all of that, this is what I'm expecting we work on as a team. This is what my expectation is in terms of timelines. This is what I'm going to give you in terms of tools and resource and people and cash, and we're all very aligned, because I can't sit there later on if I haven't been clear in delivering that strategy. I can't whinge about it if it doesn't work. Right. So I want to make sure if we've got questions or we've got someone who says, look, I don't agree with it, then we'll listen to it. We might change it and develop it on the fly, or the team get involved. But we need people to have ownership in that, and that we're all very clear on what those expectations are, right? So strategy, right across strategy. Right? And so I'd suggest that all of you would be, and even if you're not CEO, right? If you stepped aside and said, look, I'm just going to be an executive on the board or non-executive or whatever, you still need to be across strategy. I think that one. And sorry, what the first one was on what were you talking about? Physical?
The commission. Are they digital consultants or? Yeah.
No, they're actually sales agents. Called sales, and I've actually got some in South Africa for some of my businesses. So you'll be able to look up sales agents, right? And a lot of them will have, or they'll be called an agency. So it's more on that's if you were if you were going into, if yours was the fintech side and you needed to go and talk to financial businesses, or if you're doing B2B, if it was physically walking in, then that's a sales agent. Right. If I'm doing digital, then it's just a digital spend. I've got a marketing coordinator that then says, here's a budget. Here's what I expect in terms of cost of acquisition, right? And lead generation and the pipeline. And then that's what my metrics are.
Got it.
Yeah, but most of that we still own. I don't do much with outsourcing with marketing or sales, because we want to be able to be reactive and quick with it.
Okay. So it's basically I don't half the time.
Yeah, but even that, like we would get, and I would again prefer to pay someone higher level, even if you couldn't afford them full time, maybe get someone 3 days a week rather than getting a junior that you can afford at 5 days a week.
Okay.
Get the right talent, because they hit the ground quicker and you're not trying to teach them on the job, right? It's a key role. We want actions and we want it quick. We don't waste money on not having the right people in marketing.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
Michelle? One else?
Hi, Vanessa. I have an online health company, so we're very much involved in products and procuring products and selling products. And as Feel Good Health, I'm very interested to hear your story of how you moved from working in the business to how you work on the business. So obviously your lollies were very much working in the business, and from what I'm hearing, working in the business in your first few businesses. But that process, I think a lot of us entrepreneurs are quite perfectionistic, and we do believe that in most instances we do the job better than anybody else. So I find that's quite difficult to step back from, and I think it's a very important part of growth. Control.
That's about wanting control. No,
Yeah.
so what we have to learn is that, and I'll say this, every one of us is replaceable. Somebody else will do the job better. And it's an ego play if we think they can't. That yes. There'll be someone who can do it better. So it's about delegating. And you know what? I mean, I was still in my businesses up until just before COVID. It was COVID that actually really pushed me out into and more on the board level. Because I just went, well, I'm not traveling. I want to spend time with the family. It was great for us as a family. I've got 4 kids and the hubby here. So, I didn't like homeschooling, let's be fair. But
nobody liked homeschooling.
Oh my God. I think teachers don't get paid enough. But that's what taught me to go, okay, I'm not doing that now. I set up the home office and I actually really enjoy working on the strategy. So that forced me to. But I knew that I needed to because I'm a workaholic too, right? But now I work on the things that I really enjoy. So it's, I'm if I'm up at 6 a.m, it's not stuff I begrudge, it's the stuff I really want to do. It's so much more fun.
Yes, absolutely.
A really good tip. I only work on the things I really want to work on, and I give everything else to someone else. I mean, even if you just started with that premise, right? I only want to work on the stuff that I really want to work on, or that I'm really, really good at, and that maybe I'm
because you enjoy it more, you put more effort in. It's just everything's better, right? If I'm doing something I begrudge doing, I'm like, well, what's the point? Get someone else to do it.
I think for me, it's I'm very much in favor of giving away the things that I don't like doing, and I would love to have somebody doing a lot of the things that I do, and I'm sure they could do it better. But what I've found difficult is when I do give away things. Let's say, for example, procurement. Giving away procurement and then finding out that someone that you give it to over orders, you have expired products, you have, and I've found that I'm going through a lot of fits and starts of giving away and taking back, and giving away and taking back because it's not being done the way that I want it to do, and that costs money.
Yeah, it does. And I think with that, and particularly, I understand the stock side particularly well. So that one, I always make sure I've got a good inventory controller. And again, that's getting the right caliber. We and I used to do ordering too, right? Because we know it, and I have a feel, and I'm looking at the sales reports and saying, okay, what am I ordering? But I now make sure, because it's such a lot of cost, right? If we're overstocked, or we don't have stock, I sit there with my team and I say, I can't sell air, right? So I need the right amount of stock in here. But I also don't want to warehouse and stock take it if I don't have to. So that's a really big control. And so for me, inventory control is key. So I will always hire a good inventory controller. But I actually think that it's a specialized role in itself. That's not expecting someone who's just good in admin to come in and maybe take that on and they don't understand it properly, or someone who might have been in warehousing. that there's a skill to it. Right, and being proactive and forecasting out and seeing what the trends are. If I've had a huge sale this week, in 6 weeks' time, I'm going to run out of stock. Act on it now, not wait until we're out of stock.
Yes.
So and watching, if you're talking about expiry dates and things, it's keeping on top of it. But a lot of that still can be systemized. So I'm a big, firm believer in systems. I love systems. I love process because it's repeatable, and it takes a lot of the human error out of it. And I know that I can scale it up. If I've got one good team person, it's sometimes difficult to find another one the same, right? So, but if it's a system, I can scale it up and I can use it in different countries. And so as much as possible, I'd really recommend systemizing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Thank you.
Claudia, go for it.
Thank you. Hi, Vanessa. So my question is about, I founded a consumer goods company. It's food. We do hot sauces, pestos, etc. And from the beginning, because we had no choice, we started becoming global. I mean, exporting to a lot of countries, because the country where I'm from is very, very small. We never had enough market. So now I'm in a point where I'm like in 15 countries with our products, but I'm finding it quite hard to go from niche to massive in those countries. I feel like I was very good at penetrating the market in the first place, finding the right distributor partner, but growing those markets, especially when you're spread a little bit thin, when you're trying to do it for 15 countries, has become a little bit difficult. And also because we're a purpose-driven business, and sometimes that commercial side will come together with, well, I mean, just a very simple case. Like somebody asked me, like, yeah, prices are not good, you need to start bottling in plastic. And we would never do that, because it's part of the business, is the environmental part. So I've always find it, I mean, it's a strategic problem, really. So since your love is strategy, so going from niche to massive in those markets, and how not to lose the values that actually made your business what it is.
Yeah, and I think you spoke, didn't you? And weren't you on stage? And
on LinkedIn, well done, yes, also. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so in terms of majors, so what I find is when we target the wrong customer, we try and change our product or our pricing or whatever to fit. Right. So you know who you've been successful with in whichever market, who's your ideal client, right? And you've got to go for those. Sometimes we tend to go into a new market and we almost flex on that because we just want to get a sale and we just want traction, right? And we end up dealing with the wrong customers and it costs us more money. And to those points, go and change it to plastic. Well, that's not your ethos. That doesn't make Black Mamba what it is, right? So if you're core and that's part of your business, don't change it. Now, what we do is you might be able to work on, and when you consider going to some of those major retailers, who are those major retailers? Who do you absolutely want to deal with? And you go hard after them, right? And you focus. What you understand at that point too, though, is you've got volume. So if you can play on the volume game to get your pricing down, right, that might be the way that this works. Right. So volume is a huge thing for me. And the reason that we use the same product, so, you know, I'll develop up something. So we're amortizing the cost over all the countries, all the volume, and you go from something that I might have ordered, 1,000 units into New Zealand, say, but now I'm doing millions of units because it's all around the world. My cost price drops dramatically. So that's the smarter way to do it. We're not getting squeezed, and every pressure's on dropping price. Because, I say to my customers, there's only one way to carve this up, right? If they want, better prices, there's only a certain amount of margin. The pool's only so big. Right? And if we don't make any money, we're not in business and you don't have our core products. So we've all got to make money here. So the way for me is to focus on how do I get better buying power on that. And I'm a big believer in volume.
Totally. We are building the volumes, which is great. What we're doing and what we've noticed is we haven't increased price in a while because we're already on top, but we've created an amazing economies of scale now. And I think it's completely right at buying power. I want to feel powerful in that sense in front of my suppliers. So thank you. Makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think in that, just I would say, are you, and is a strategy that you have focus on those big guys as well. So, making sure that you definitely,
yes.
And they might be more difficult and there's a longer sales cycle.
Yes.
But your top 5 customers that you want, and you're touching base and you're hammering them all the time, right? Until they actually give in and work with you.
That's one thing that I have is stubbornness and resilience.
Yeah.
They will get tired of you and then they will, okay, fine. We'll work with you.
Well, I had a buyer in JB. So JB Hi-Fi is the biggest electronics retailer in Australia. And this buyer just would not talk to us, right? So we sent her a handbag with a mobile phone in it. So she got the bag and the phone started ringing. So she had to answer it. And she answered it and she thought it was a great idea. So she'd set a meeting with us.
I love it.
And I love it. There was another company who sent a buyer one shoe and said, call me if you want the other one. Well, how cool is that?
That's very brilliant.
They start to get creative if they won't. And so
yes.
even there's a brand in Australia, and they're actually a not-for-profit, and they do water. Right, so Thank You Water. Now they've built into heaps of products, but they're a social enterprise. So they wanted to get Woolworths here, which is that's our major supermarket chain. They wanted their attention, so they waited. They knew when the board meeting was going to be on, and they actually did a sign writer in the sky and said, "You please call." So talking about Woolworths board, please call us, and had the phone number up, and they did because they're impressed with the effort that they put in, and they got Woolies then. Sometimes about being clever.
Yeah.
Right? We had a stand. I was trying to crack the US at one stage with some licensing, and I had Batman, a guy who posed as Batman, and everyone wants to get a photo with him. So they have to stop. You've got to get their details, and then we go, right? We've got contact.
I love it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Go
creative. Hi, Vanessa. It's been fantastic listening to you. I own a consumer good cosmetics, and we focused on sensitive acne-prone skin makeup, right? So 2 questions. First of all, you speak about hiring people in this sort of super fast way. Oh, I just have a marketing coordinator, and then this, then the other happened. And then we just got the CEO, and then I've got 17 companies and got CEOs, and COOs,
yeah.
CFOs,
Yeah.
for all of these people.
Over like 30 years,
And then,
right?
and then in the same breath, you talk about how you can't hire 40 people in 1 month because you know what that means. You'll just get slaughtered, and 6 months later you'll get nailed. And so how are you doing all of this, or what special skill do you think you have that helps you find the right person? So that's question one. The second question is, how do I get 20 minutes with you to talk about the details of my situation that I think you could really add fresh eyes on?
Sure. So for your second part, yes. So contact me afterward, or I don't know if you got the details or whatever. Happy to, right? So we're just working a time where we can have a chat. So yes, at anyone, I offer that to anyone, right? So if I can make it a bit easier, if you find some value in what I'm saying, then great. I don't know everything. I won't pretend to know anything, and I won't give an opinion on something I haven't experienced either, right? So I only talk from lived experience. So that aside, in terms of the right person, look, for that, I have what I call a tag and release. So I am always looking for people. So, I mean, it could be anywhere. I've had really good people. I've walked into a store and been really impressed with the way that they've, dealt with me. And I'm like, all right, I need your details. At some point, that person's going to work for me. So we have a tag and release, and I don't need that person right now. And I don't even know what the role is, but I'll figure it out because they're just a great people. So I'm kind of a collector of good people. And it doesn't always work, but if I, or recommendations. So I'll ask, other people. So if someone's exited business, I'm like, who in your team would you recommend, right? So if they're no longer there, it's great because it doesn't matter to them. They can't poach them anyway. But for that point is going, who would you recommend that we hire? If I need someone to market, I'm asking all the business going, who have you worked with? Who, even from my customers, we ask everyone for recommendations. Right? They know our ethos. Everyone's clear about what my companies represent and the way that we run them. So they'll know if they fit or not. I don't want a toxic person in my team. We've got awesome culture. And I've got teams that have worked, I've got people who've worked with me for 20 years, right? And moved company to company. I want that type of, the people who enjoy being there, good attitudes. If we've got a problem, we talk about it. We risk mitigate. We work together. There's no blaming game. We're continuously improving. We'll never sit on our laurels and think that we know everything. So those things are important because I'm looking for people who fit that as well. A lot of things, I actually think attitude is the most important thing. Skill, a lot of the time you can teach the job. You can't teach the attitude.
Yeah. And who deals with the nitty-gritty of it all, like the admin of the contract and the, that sort of stuff?
So the contracts, contracts now, right? ChatGPT can bloody write contracts. But I have invested in external HR companies that have got templates. So I've got good one, and I invested the money to get a good HR lawyer, well, not lawyer, but the HR consultant just to write the contracts for me. So for key roles. So I'm looking if it's admin, executive, and sales, right? Because they've got different metrics. And then we just use it all the time. It's just a rinse and repeat. Just changing the name and the job title and dollars. So, but it has all my, the things that are important to me are the confidentiality, the non-competes, all that stuff's in those contracts.
Right.
So I've got the good contracts. I'd ask, always be on the lookout for talent, but ask other people in your network or, could someone recommend someone? Because that goes a long way, right? If they've worked with them or know them. Because I actually think the whole bloody interview process is flawed anyway. You're never going to tell anyone how shit you are at something, are you? Exactly. Everyone's fantastic when they come in for an interview.
Amazing when they come for an interview. Everyone's amazing when they come for an interview. Right. And then 2 weeks later or 3 months later, they're a complete waste of time.
Yeah, and even the referrals, they're only going to give you, the references are only going to be good ones. They're never going to give you a bad one. They don't even bother ringing those. Because as if anyone's going to give you a bad reference, the call.
Yeah. And just on the note that Michelle was saying about sort of, releasing the control and so that you can do the things that you love. I've been on that path since 2018, releasing and trying to allow other people. And I did that, and it's just ended up costing me an absolute fortune because one of the people that I left in charge of something ran it all wrong. And it's ended up costing me a lot of money and pain
Yeah.
in the chest. But
so, to that I'd ask, was there enough and I'm only assuming, was there enough training provided, or was it the right skill set for that role? Or, there's a lot of questions to ask there, right?
Enough holding people accountable. I mean, that's the other thing we often have to do when we have put someone in charge of something or in place of something. Are you holding their feet to the fire on a weekly basis? And, it is one thing to delegate and let people go get on with anything, but then you have to hold them accountable for what you want them to achieve. And I think that's often the piece that we miss. And because that's how you catch shit happening quickly, right? That's how you.
Yeah. We call it in our team, we've got managed by agreement, right? So, if I say that and we talk about ripple effects. So if you've given me a timeline, you've agreed that you can meet that, then I am going to hold you to it, right? I'm not going to nag you beforehand, but if we get to Friday and you've said you have it by Friday, then we're going to have a real good conversation if you haven't met that, because I would have then committed that to somebody else. Right? So we talk about that on day one of the hire. My expectation is that if you've agreed, I'm not going to give you timelines that don't make any sense, right? But if you've agreed, you said you can do that timeline, then we will hold you to that, because everyone in the team relies. And you throw that stone out there and you're late, then someone else is late, and they promise, we don't, for us, we deliver on what we tell our customers, right? And that's incredibly important to us. Reputation is everything. So we have to deliver. And so that's everyone working to the commitments that they make.
Brilliant. Sandra, you've got a question.
Vanessa, thank you very much for sharing your story and you sharing actually your insights. You're very clear. So thank you very much for that. It's impressive how you built 27 countries. My question is around, at what point did you start running multiple companies well? And what are the things that you did? And was there a temptation to lump a lot of things that should have been another company into one company?
Yes, to that point there was a lot of the things what I've realized is the fastest way to grow is we focus. So we focus on what it is that we're really good at. Anything else I outsource. So we're not a logistics company. If I don't have to warehouse it, I'm not going to do it. There's a whole heap of things that we tend to take on in business, and we take on all these other verticals, and we're not good at it, and there'll be people who can do it better. So I'm actually a really fan of the bits that, and knowing from the start, so even our electronics business, ours was, we're tooling, we've got exclusivity, we're design. That's what we were really good at, right? And quality control. So, we would have massive checks, and we deal with the Toyota continuous improvement model. But, that's what we're good at. We're not good at other parts of the business, and someone else is better at it, outsource it to them. So we keep completely focused and we stay in our lane, but we'll partner with someone else who's really good at that. So I want to work with the best people, best companies in the market that own that particular service or product offering or space. So we don't take on anything we can't add value to, is one. I don't need to learn lessons in that. Someone else will do it better. Now, in terms of multiple companies, look, a lot of that came just by going international. Like, we had to set up offices in, an office in Delaware in the US, and we needed to set up an office in China, and we needed one in Hong Kong when we were dealing with them, and UK. And so it naturally happened that way, where it was, we got those offices set up, or another company, because of the different regions. But a lot of the time too is on the strategy piece is now I'm actually realizing we've got other values. So with my electronics company, we were so good at building brands that we actually started another company just building brands for other people. So, we had 19 brands, and every single one of them was number one in their category. We never spent a dollar in marketing, but we knew how to package things. We knew how to get them on shelf. It built its brands itself. So then that company is a multi-million-dollar company that does brands for other people. So we're always looking at, is there another asset within this business that we can monetize? So that's where some of the businesses have been offshoots to go, actually, even our systems, there's another business, like even the sales, what I'm talking about with business. So many people ask me for advice on that. We built a business that has just business tools, right? Because I've got them all documented anyway, because I'm such a big I love process, right? But I didn't realize how that could be valued to other people. So now that's a company on its own. That's just all the processes that we've built. So, you know, and multiple businesses is the right people. Sometimes on the low side, if you know, it's sort of just building up, I have a GM in there if I can't afford a CEO yet. But as soon as I can, that's the next hire, right? And then it's on them to be able to run that team and you know, do the things I need them to do.
Thank you.
Extraordinary. Vanessa, you are a mogul. We are so thankful that we have been able to like eke out of you so much wisdom, so much knowledge, so much experience. I mean, it's priceless. I mean, really, really, really extraordinary. I've written myself half a dozen notes here of things that I've like, oh yeah. That's so. I think maybe my biggest takeaway is just, again, bravery. It's the sense of got to be brave, got to be bold, speed matters, people matter. We've spent so much time on this call talking about people, and people, I can't say it enough, you know, just this sense of right people, right time, doing the right thing, right skills helps you move to the next level, helps the business.
Absolutely. I mean, even one of the boards I'm on, so Lauren, oh, you guys would have met Lauren, right? So I'm on Lauren's board. Lauren she's a fantastic CEO, right? But she wouldn't delegate. So I jumped on her board last year and I said, it was just like pulling teeth. And I tell her this, right? But it's to get a good team around her. And she's logging away this thing for 15 years. She's burnt out. She works 18 hours a day. And I remember sitting there saying to Lauren, look, that's not impressive to me, right? We need to get your calendar down. We need to get your time to actually think and strategically think. That business now, the turnaround that we've done to get a good COO in there, you know, a good head of product in there, good marketing agent, and the business is, you know, it's double the value now that it was 12 months ago. But it was getting those 3 key hires. She's very good at all those jobs, but she's even better at strategy. So I've got to give her the time and the right resources as her chair to go, now this is where you focus, because the results are there. Now she can afford to pay these people. Some of them at the time you're like, oh, you know, it's a big spend, but it paid for itself because it's the right hires and the right people that will actually drive the business forward.
That's the other thing, isn't it? The right hires will pay for themselves. They just have to be the right hire. They have to generate ROI for you.
Yeah, and we had one of the COOs was in there, and even the national sales manager, right? Dud hire, they were terrible. So they were through recruitment companies. So the first lot didn't work. Second one, incredible, right? So sometimes you don't get it right, but we know we're on it and we're watching and we're clear on deliverables. And you know, when they don't deliver, they're out. These are not junior people. So they don't deliver. I'm not listening to excuses. If we're paying them decent money and they're an executive, then they've got to deliver. And if they don't, they're out. It's different if it was an admin person we're trying to train, you give them a few chances, right? But you know, we need the right person in that role. If we're going to pay for it and pay handsomely, then I want someone who owns it and is accountable.
Yeah, who's able to really take responsibility for something and really own it.
Yeah. And they'll get rewarded too, right? And they do it right, which they all do. And that's why my executive teams always have stayed with me through all the companies, because we do look after them. But we do need the right people on board, on the bus.
Love it. So much knowledge, so much wealth. We could talk for hours, but we're going to let you go because you are an exceptionally busy woman and you're hard to pin down. So we're going to let you get back to your family.
This last couple of weeks has been nuts. Normally I'm better than that, but yeah, we did have a few false starts, didn't we, Sarah?
We did, but this was even better. So this was amazing. So you and I will circle up again, but this was so fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for your wisdom.
Thanks for meeting everyone, listening to me and taking the time. I know you're all busy, and so
you have to
fully thankful for your time.
Minutes. If you're difficult to pin down, I've got to promise you 20 minutes.
Just email me and we'll set up a time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.